former NFL cornerback, drafted in 1992, has been a part of multiple NFL teams, but mostly has spent a lot of his years in Carolina. Super excited, and I'm so glad for him to take the time and to come onto the show. So joining us here, former cornerback Rod Smith joining up on the show. I mean, that's the thing, Rod, is just like we all kind of feel like we're optometrists up to this point. I'm like, how could we possibly predict these quarterbacks' futures? I mean, this is just pure insanity.
You know what? I listened to your open or the last couple minutes, and I really think it was really well said. It doesn't factor in people's thinking nearly enough the environment a quarterback is in, right? I mean, we're still talking about, a 21-year-old, a 22-year-old, a 23-year-old kid, right? And if you put them with the right coach and a couple weapons, and a decent left tackle who's going to have a little bit of time, and some open receivers that at least on 60% of plays, the first three reads, somebody should be available, right? I mean, give them that. You give them an exponentially greater chance to have success than, I think, we know this intuitively, but looking at like the Panthers situation, there is no doubt that Bryce Young was the number one player on everybody's board for a reason, right? But you put him in a situation where he's not being protected, and his number one option, is about my age. Well, not exactly, but okay, but a 35-year-old number one option, and you're gonna have a disaster on your hands, despite what kind of coaching you offer. And I think you hit it on the head. If they commit Chicago to Caleb, they certainly need to. It would be beneficial for everybody to make sure that he has as many weapons as possible. They absolutely, like you said, they absolutely have to pivot to offense and literally spend the next draft, maybe two drafts, almost completely focused on building that side of the ball. That doesn't just mean drafts. That may be trading some picks and getting some veterans, but making sure that he can stand on 2 feet for 1001, 1002, 1003, not get hit in the face. All right. And then make sure that he has at least an option and a half, a full 1.5 options, right? If it's not DJ Moore, they're doubling him, fine. Then one of my next two reads has to be open. Not both of them, but one. If I can't find the number two receiver, I got to be able to get to the tight end or running back.
Yep.
If not, you got a problem.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, no, 100%. And think about it this way, is that Chicago made the move to where they've gotten rid of a lot of their big-time pass rushers. They got rid of Khalil Mack. They gotten rid of Roquan Smith, and now, he's making a huge hit in Baltimore. But here's the other thing that stands out to me, and where part of this with the coaching staff when Luke Getsy got fired, because Eberflus, what he worked on is he worked on his side of the ball. And you saw that ID when Montez Sweat got traded to Chicago, and in the first 2 games, he's already had 6 sacks. So it's just like, that's not a problem. And Chicago has always been known for great defense. So, I feel like, you got to pivot to offense in this way, because the only way you got to do it is you got to be scoring more than 25 points a game. I mean, that's kind of the real reality now. And so in the end, I look at Chicago. I honestly love a couple of their pieces on offensive line. I think Tevin Jenkins really has finally showed up, and he is so good. And then eventually you're going to need to start building up some depth. So that's going to be super important for Chicago. But I want to bring it back to this, because since you mentioned it with Carolina, so you've been a part of this organization in the past. And my thing with Carolina is I want Bryce Young to succeed. A lot of people are like, well, his size is going to really be a factor to whether or not he really does translate to be a franchise quarterback. But here's the other thing. When Frank Reich got hired, I felt like he's a former quarterback. He's a good quarterback whisperer. I mean, we've watched, Phillip Rivers. We've watched Andrew Luck. We've watched Carson Wentz. He built these guys. But then eventually, look, the stuff with Dave Tepper, I would rather just focus on football than what's happening in the upper stands. But my thing is now, right. Dave Canales comes in, right? Mm-hmm. And so from your perspective up on this, how successful should Dave Canales really kind of get this offense rolling? Because they're going to need a lot. They're going to need probably some more wide receiver help because, I mean, yeah, Adam Thielen, I can't rely on him majority of the time. And we know it was a harder sacrifice giving rid of DJ Moore to Chicago, but you needed it for the top pick. So how else does Carolina really have to kind of tackle this draft and the free agency come this offseason?
Well, I mean, they need everything on offense, really.
Yeah.
I mean, they're okay at running back, but offensive line needs help. They need weapons on the outside. They're solid at tight end, but I mean, you know, I'm a big believer in I'm so funny. My confirmation bias is from Bill Parcells, 100%. Right? I see the game as much as I can through his eyes, and you build. It's funny. Bill Parcells said to me one time at 5:00 in the morning on the treadmill. He says, I asked him, "Hey, coach, listen, how do you draft players? I mean, if you got a second round rating on a corner, a tight end, a tackle, how do you decide? What's your decision making process for deciding who you draft?" And he goes, "You know what, Rod? Here's the key thing you need to know. Number one, a good big football player is better than a good small football player."
Yeah.
I went, wow. Okay. I mean, it's real simple. So if you have a second round grade on a tackle and a second round grade on a wide receiver, we're taking the tackle, right? If you got a first round grade on a tackle and a first round grade on a safety, we're taking the tackle. We're taking the So I'd like to see the Panthers build long term, which is inside out, which is from both line of scrimmage out, starting with the offensive line first and the defensive line first, and then we'll fill in on the outside. Unless you can catch a deal and maybe get another wide receiver, that'd be great. We need one badly.
Yeah.
But I'm even okay. A lot of people wouldn't like this, fans, but I'm even okay struggling a little bit longer to build out that offensive line. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because once we get that, top 15 in the league, now we can cut the quarterback loose. But last year, let me try to be brief about this. The thing last year that I saw, and I went to a bunch of games and got down there on the field, I'm standing there watching it. So that perspective, I mean, on the field watching the guys throw passes, I'm telling you, I mean, literally 50% of the plays, he's going 1 read, 2 read, 3 read, 4 read. If there's a 5, I'm trying to find 5, and he's keeping his back foot on the spot. Right? He is literally, his back foot is on the spot. He is not moving. And a lot of fans don't understand what that may not understand what that means, but it means that he is 100% dedicated to executing what the coach wants him to do. And he's showing his linemen the absolute utmost respect in his own personal sacrifice. I'm going to stand on this spot, and I trust you guys to protect me on this spot. Even though I've been sacked 6 times, I'm still going to stand on this spot. I'm going to go through my reads, and if I get sacked, then I just get sacked. But I'm not going to leave the pocket after reads. 1's not open, 2's not open. Guys panic, they scramble, right? Yep. Justin Fields, he's better now, but Justin Fields used to be a 1 read, 2 read, I'm out of here guy, right?
Right.
All right. So Bryce has the physical toughness and it's trying to develop the trust with his linemen and his coaching staff that if you call a play and I'm supposed to stand on this thing 7 yards deep, I'm going to stand on that spot and make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reads. And if I get sacked, that's on you guys. You know what I mean? Rather than running out. So I think he's showed incredible toughness last year. And with a little bit of protection, I still think it can be a problem. Can he hold up over time with his size? We'll see. But again, like Parcells said, the best indicator of future success is what? Past success. Player of the year coming out of high school, player of the year coming out of college. I mean, do the math,
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is because Bryce Young, I mean, I watch so many of his tapes in Alabama and just the kind of throws that he makes when he's not under duress. I mean, it's unbelievable. That's why that's the hope for Carolina. And when you get more weapons in, and at the same time, it just kind of felt like the run game was very it was very streaky because even though when you look at Miles Sanders and the time he spent in Philadelphia, I mean, injuries was kind of the thing with it, but at the same time, there was just inconsistency. So it's now you really got to build a little from scratch, but kind of rejuvenate this offense at the same time. So part of this reason is there's going to be sacrifices involved. And the names, I'm sure Brian Burns is one of them. There's a couple of other key spots that they're going to have to maybe trade some pieces on. or they might have to move up and start getting younger. But I mean, I look at it. Derek Brown, very much an offensive disruptor up on the line. And then I look at J.C. Horn, and I'm just kind of like, well, I'm getting a stopper. Because I loved it when they would build their defense around like Shaq Thompson, and even when you get Jeremy Chin out there.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to have to be at this point. They're going to have to make some sacrifices on defense, right?
Yeah, I mean, it appears that way. And I don't know if they've gotten the right price for Burns yet. But if they get it, that's obviously the number one piece that they have to trade and try to develop some talent on offense. Yeah, and again, like everybody's worth trading, right? I mean, for the right amount, right? So it depends on what the offer is. You know what I mean? I mean, Brian's a great player, and we know that edge rusher is what you got, quarterback, left tackle, into depending on who you talk to, Matthew look at interior defensive lineman, rush end. I mean, those. So you're looking at the third most important position, most impactful position in football that Brian plays, which increases his value. But unless we get light for light, he's going to be our guy for a little while. But I mean, like you said, the Carolina Panthers absolutely need to focus full stop on offense, and I think focusing up front will optimize their returns a little faster.
Yeah, absolutely. So a kind of a question for you, and I'd love to get your input upon this, because as somebody who is a former corner, I look at this league right now, and I would say the toughest position to really fill the void nowadays is corner, because the cornerbacks I used to watch years ago, I loved watching Quentin Jammer. I loved watching a lot of these shutdown corners, man. And it's just like nowadays, because the league has pivoted to offense so much, I'm looking at a lot of these receivers. I mean, these guys they're speedy like Tyreek Hill. These guys are big-time route runners like Keenan Allen. And then you've got the size and length of like some guys that are out there. Like even when I watch DeAndre Hopkins, how, in your perspective, watching this league transition, how difficult has it been to really kind of find that star corner? Because I look at right now some corners like Sauce Gardner and Christian Gonzalez. It's kind of hard now to kind of find that really good corner, because teams are looking everywhere to try to fill that void.
You hit it on the head when you said, to start this whole answer here, that the league is pivoted to offense, right? As offense becomes less encumbered, you're finding more athletes that could play wide out rather than corner are playing wide out. You know what I mean? Like a guy like me now would probably play wide out rather than corner. I don't have great hands. I still don't have great hands. But just being an athlete and having speed and athleticism, there's more value getting that guy on the offensive side than the defensive side now. So you're seeing kind of like a talent drain from the corner position over to a wide receiver. On all levels coming up, and in that, obviously there's just less guys that are absolutely shut down corners now than in the past. I think that's the reason why, because it's just there's just more value on that offense now, the way the rules are, right? I mean, back in my day, you could dump guys on their head and hit the quarterback in the face and all that kind of stuff like that, and kind of mitigate some of the passing. But now, you can't touch them, you can't. I mean, which is better for the game. I'm not arguing that it's absolutely the right thing to do when players are bigger, faster, stronger, and you have to mitigate their contacts so that they don't kill each other. That's the truth, right? So right. I don't think it's like we want someone to take us. I think it's more of a, how do we protect ourselves and protect the game long term? And I think it's the right move. All right. But yeah, I think it's a talent drain. They're just guys moving. That guy that, like Rod Smith is a freshman at Notre Dame playing wide receiver, maybe stays at wide receiver for 4 years rather than switch over to corner, versus back then they're like, hey, you're a corner, get out of here. You know what I mean? We got to, but now you probably keep Rod Smith at wide receiver, even though he's got the worst hands in the league. All right.
Right. Yeah. And think about it this way, like, the development, especially when you get wide receivers coaches, you get think of it this way. I mean, I looked at, because everybody wanted to put Quentin Johnston in, the back burner. And I'm just like, whoa, timeout. I'm not going to condemn a guy who didn't have, like, at the same time, the head coaching thing was an absolute mess. And at the same time, I'm not going to condemn him because of the fact that, first of all, it's his rookie season. What I expect is if you develop in the second, third year, that's where the guaranteed contract comes from. So in comes Jim Harbaugh, and let's say he develops him and he starts catching the ball left and right, then people are going to forget about his rookie season. That's usually what happens. They're going to forget your worst, and they're going to basically say, you know what? He's playing at his best right now, and I would rather take him right now at this point. That's kind of the development, right? So for all of our audiences, because anytime I have former players, I love the experience. I love the journey roads. For you especially, because drafted in 92 and at the same time playing in an environment like Carolina, it was a new franchise. It was something that was like you had to build a new culture, right? So you get big time guys you played around like Kevin Green, Sam Mills, and, you even had Musa Mohammed, a wide receiver that was up out there, and Kerry Collins. What was that experience like for you? Because when you look at defenses nowadays, and Carolina, I watched them for years where I would watch Julius Peppers go in, and he's just annihilating offensive players, man. And it's just like, what was kind of that philosophy in Carolina for our offenses or for our audiences to really experience that?
Yeah, it was fantastic. And just for the record, so I don't confuse anybody, like I was a second rounder to the Patriots. I was there for 3 years, 2 years under Bill Parcells. I mean, I don't want to say the best 2 years, but a very rewarding time playing with Parcells and that Patriot way, getting that whole thing started. The worst team in the league, 2-14 as a freshman, as a rookie. And we get Bledsoe and Parcells come in, and 2 years later we're in the playoffs. And I knew that they were going to be in the Super Bowl. When I found out I was leaving for Carolina, the first pick in the expansion draft, which is great, that's awesome. I cried. I learned very few things that made me cry. I cried like a baby. I don't want to leave this team. I was a starter. It was great. I knew they were going to win the Super Bowl. But being in Carolina was fantastic too, and a very unique experience. Because in every team you're on, there's always seniority, right? There's guys that have been there 5 years, guys that have been there 10 years or whatever, and they know where to go, where to live, where the nearest Dunkin' Donuts is, which rookies are going to get the donuts that week or the coffee. Like there's a whole cascade of seniority that helps inform the decisions that the younger guys make, right? I'm going to say that with play. Okay, so they help us make good decisions, or decisions at least. So we get to Carolina. It's just a bunch of guys from different teams. There's no seniority. There's nobody that's been there 2 years, 3 years. I can tell you, hey, do this, go here, live there, call this agent, like do this. Like so we're all in this thing together. And I think Jay Richardson did a phenomenal job by putting us in small groups, condensed groups, and keeping us together as much as possible. We played in Clemson that first year. And we would drive down the night before on a team bus and go down as a team. But that bus ride and being in the hotel with your guys really helped us bond quickly. And then on the way back on those bus rides back to Charlotte, you could bring up to like 5 guests. You could bring your grandmother and your kids, and so like everybody got to know everybody's family. You know what I mean? In significant others and all that. So it really galvanized the team, and I think it led to our success in '96. Playing for the NFC Championship game, losing to the Packers, but having a chance to go to the Super Bowl.
Oh man, and think about it this way. You had Dom Capers as the head coach, and that was a guy that, again, a lot of head coaches, you see their philosophy, you see how their build is. That was definitely a team that was just like, once the expansion happened, and then it was like, okay, now we got to start building that culture. That is just something special, because even when we look at today's game, even if we thought of, the NFL was going to expand at some point, right? It ultimately comes from not just the location, but the quality you're bringing in, to the point of, this is the culture we want to build so that our fan base can grow bigger and stronger than ever, because that's literally everything. That's kind of how it was in Carolina, starting that fan base, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Having guys, the tip of the spear being guys like, Sam Mills, and like you mentioned, Kevin Green and Lamar Lathan and Eric Davis, and these guys, Brett Maxey. We just had amazing veterans in leadership on our ball club. Great job by the personnel team bringing in a bunch of not just good football players. They were good football players, but they were great people. And really guys that went out of their way to talk to the young guys and share their ideas and their successes and how to be a professional football player. I think as much as the level of talent had to do with our early success in Carolina, it was as much as dependent on the quality of the people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, to me personally, I've only been in Charlotte once. I actually had a layover because I was on a cruise from going to Bahamas, and our layover back to Vegas, we had to stop up in Charlotte. So I stopped at Charlotte's airport, and I see Carolina Panthers everywhere when Cam Newton and all that. But then at the same time, my family's like, "Hey, there's a chicken place right here. You want to go to Bojangles?" I'm like, "All right." Hey, I'm always good for some Southern cooking, and at the same time, love the experience of it. I'm very much a traveler. I like to go to places, experience, the culture and the people, and I mean, it's such a great, fantastic feeling, right? So, two quick questions before letting you go. So obviously, this draft, there is a lot of young kids that are going to be coming in here, starting their careers, and like I said before, I hope every one of them have the path for success, because we see guys that are either the number one overall pick or they're like Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, who apparently seems to be relevant with the 49ers as long as you got Kyle Shanahan. But if you looking at this, I don't know if you've evaluated with a lot of players lately, but is there someone that you've looked at in mind that you're just you see the character, you see the work ethic and what they put together? If there's somebody on your radar to look out for.
It's funny. I watched the draft shows and trying to keep up with all the players. It's funny, about Caleb Williams and him not improving in a lot of statistics over the last 2 years, but the one he has improved in the most is his pass breakups and his interceptions. He's getting better at ball security. And what's funny about this is that, and this goes back to Bill Parcells again. Bill Parcells says, and this is the quick story. So Bill Parcells used to get in at 5 o'clock in the morning and do like an hour on the treadmill. I mean, not real fast, but he'd run, right? So I'm a second-year player, so I was like, are you kidding me? I can isolate it. So I'd go in once a week at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I just get on the treadmill next to him and ask him questions, just pepper him with questions, and he just loved talking. So it's Bill Parcells, right? You're talking football, he loves it. I'm just learning from Bill Parcells. Are you kidding me? One-on-one, it's amazing. So one of the things I talked to him about were quarterbacks, and he said, he goes, 85% of games are lost. There's an interception, there's a mental error, there's a penalty, and you lose the game. Like, you go back and watch games, 85% of them are lost. Very few times is somebody making a great play or a great decision and actually winning the game, turning the tide. He had a good sense of the analytics way back in 93. He was already talking about percentages. If we have -1 turnover, -2 turnover, like chances to win the game. He was already doing this stuff way back then. And the single biggest impact on win-loss percentage is turnovers. If your quarterback throws a turnover -1, I don't care if he goes 30 for 36 for 360 yards and 3 scores. If he throws 2 picks, you're going to get beat.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, his quarterback rating is going to be 109. He's going to look great because he threw for almost 400 yards. He completed almost 75% of his passes, but he throws 2 picks. You're going to lose. You're going to win 24% of those games. I mean, okay. And he played his tail off. So all this to back up to say is the quarterback that does a good job of protecting the football will give you a chance to win. Not like 50-50 chance, but will give you a 75% chance to beat other teams that just turn it over. Like if you just, a punt's not so bad. But so to hear that Caleb is getting better at protecting the football inspires me, because that's actually more important than his completion percentage or touchdowns. Like the fact he's getting better at managing where that ball goes and making sure the enemy doesn't get their hands on it is the game changer.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, the more you protect the football and keep the possession on your side up on that, that's going to be a big difference maker. And Yeah, like I said, I hope that, Caleb Williams, he really does succeed in this league. And, I'm just excited overall for the overhaul of quarterbacks, because we're so used to, like, you had to have a star quarterback, whether it was Favre or it was Manning or it was like either one. And now we got a huge overhaul of them, and it's crazy to see the talent really come up. My personal pick, honestly, that I feel like could be a difference maker that a lot of people have so much skepticism on is Bo Nix, because I felt like I look at his development that Dan Lanning did in Oregon, and the kid is just phenomenal. I think if you put him in the middle of a Raiders, a Vikings, or even if you put him in a Seattle offense, that kid is going to give you everything you want, and even for Denver. So hopefully, these quarterbacks, they really do work. But a fun question for you, because of course, knowing based upon your name, have you had that experience where people kind of mistaken you from the other Rod Smith from Denver? Like, has that ever happened to you in your career?
It happens. It happens daily. I mean, literally, if I'm on TikTok or something, on Facebook or something, or Instagram, some people are like, "Hey, I'm the biggest Denver fan ever," and I'm like, no, I'm the different Ross Smith." I literally get that every single day. I am not kidding, and I know Rod and played against him, and he's a stud, man. Really good football player. Long arms, super wide catch radius, highly intelligent, well prepared, much physically tougher than he looks in the way he approaches. A guy doesn't have like any real swagger type thing, doesn't like walk with his chest out, but you get him on run plays and try to knock him down, you're gonna be in for a surprise. I mean, he's a really tough, physical, consistent blocker. I mean, I didn't see that on film, but when I got out there and tried to like get after him a little bit, like it didn't get anywhere. Like, he's a really tough guy, and wildly intelligent and a good football player. And to answer your question, I do get something Rod Smith. If they can't see my face, they're like, "Hey, Rod Smith, I'm the biggest Denver fan ever." Like, I get it all the time.
Oh man. Yeah, no, I mean, hey, like I said, I made sure because I do my research all the time, because I try to avoid that. But for me, like, me personally, I've been doing this show for going on 4 years running, and just to really, experience it, because you are now part of the list that I have experienced from a lot of former players. I mean, I just recently talked to James Canada, really, really nice guy, great guy, told me a lot about his experience in Tampa. Then Marlon Greenwood, I met up with Sean Merriman. So it's just like the experience of it is just what makes the show so valuable, and just, the content itself, because it ain't like we're just going to be chopping up football all day. It's just like what the journey road, the life of where we were at, what it took for us to get there, and now what we're doing afterward in our career. So good, dude. You look great, man. And seeing your content as well, just producing and taking it by storm, is just something special. But I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for taking the time, man. Really appreciate it, and really loved seeing your insights on everything, man. And hopefully, like I said, Carolina rejuvenates, and we'll see better days, and hopefully we'll get the best out of Bryce Young that we saw up in Alabama. But appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we will see you soon.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. It's been wonderful. I love your content, and your commentary was spot on. I agree with it. And let's do it again soon.
Absolutely, man. You bet. Hey there, everyone. Thanks for watching. Make sure that you guys like, follow, and subscribe to get the latest from the show. Also, go check out a few of our coolest segments that we've had from previous shows. And also make sure that you stay up to date on the show on all platforms, wherever you guys find your podcasts.